Ooh, that sugar sweet, you got what I need. Sipping on the potion, all that good emotion. Just my kind of heat, keep it on repeat. Tested by the potion, loving this devotion.
We always wanted to go to the Bay of Island by boat. For us, it is the first time we are planning to sail so far outside the protection of the rocky Gulf. In the last episode, we cleaned our boat's hull out. Now we were waiting for a good weather window to sail north to the Bay of Islands. As soon as the forecast was calm and stable for the next couple of days, we decided to leave. Our first stop was Vivian Bay in Kawa Island. From Vivian Bay to Wangata, it's a 40 nautical mile sail. There are no safe overnight anchorages on this stretch, but unfortunately there was not much wind and we had to do a lot of motoring. It's a beautiful coastline though, with lots of surf beaches.
Boring. 5 hours of motoring to get to Wangamumu, no wind. And the question is, why do we do it? Why do we go? Well, it's a nice opportunity to get up north to the Bay of Islands in this nice calm weather window. So I want to do it to get to halfway, and then from there on the coastline becomes interesting and we can sail short distances.
We arrived late afternoon in Wangamumu and anchored in Urquharts Bay, where we met up with our friends Rose and Rick, who supplied us with fresh produce from their garden. Juicy feijoas, guava, chilies and fresh basil. The next morning we continued our journey and headed up to Wangamumu. Dolphins were following us and played in our bow wave. It feels like the dolphins were also observing us, and Gijs had a long conversation with one of them.
Oh my god!
Wangamumu is a natural sheltered harbour, and traditionally it is a stopping place for sea travellers between Wangamumu and Bay of Islands. We anchored at the south side of the harbour. Mimi Wangata Coastal Park is run by the Department of Conservation. And there's a very nice loop walk around the headlands, with shady beaches, rocky shores, farmlands, native vegetation and lots of bird life. Our last stop before the Bay of Islands is Wangamumu. It is a large round bay with a narrow entrance, surrounded by beautiful countryside. It is the site of an old whaling station. Wangamumu was apparently the only place in the world that caught whales in nets. They used wooden rowboats to hunt them, and the whales were driven into the bay where they were trapped by a large net in the narrow entrance. Later they used steam power boats with harpoons. You can still see many relics of the whaling station remain in the bay. For our final leg, we had to go around Cape Brett, past Percy Rock with its famous hole in the rock. Bay of Islands is named for the 144 islands that litter the bay. Their endless sheltered bays, clear and clean water, and a climate that is warmer than anywhere else in New Zealand. Look, we are welcomed by a seal. Our first stop was Paradise Bay. You can make an amazing trek over the hills to the beach on the other side of the islands, and there's lots of bird life. A bit of rain is good for the boat to clean off the salt water. Bay of Islands is one of the country's richest seafood grounds. There is an abundance of fish and shellfish. From Paradise Bay we headed off to Vapido Bay.
Got the feeling in your bones, make you feel right at home.
From Vapido Bay we set off to the very sheltered Opunga Cove.
Keep me dancing till I'm dead, 'cause I could run a mile like this, head over heels as I miss. The sun has got me on my track, I ain't never looking back. I ain't looking
Wolkjes wel. Maar ja, wel lekker even, want schieten tenminste, dan kan ik enorm oplopen.
There are some private Maori beaches on shore, and it's an excellent place for shellfish gathering. The Bay of Islands is full of wildlife. It is easy to catch fish and gather shellfish, tuatuas, clams. Our diet during this trip was of course seafood.
deep inside the depths of stone. Voice will echo me no phone.
We made a day trip to Motoroa Island and anchored in Army Bay.
Ruled by the laws above. Nature shows me, makes me taught. I could climb this mountain now, rise above the clouds.
There is a walking trail which circles Motoroa Island with beautiful views over the Bay of Islands.
Ruled by the laws above. Nature shows me, makes me taught. I could climb this mountain now, rise above the clouds and see.
En, hoe gaat het?
Oh, the falls of kept us strong.
Hij ging goed gedaan.
Never
Een
did I mean no wrong. 'Cause I ain't looking back. I ain't looking back. Ain't looking. Ooh, ain't looking back. Ain't looking. Yeah, ain't looking back. Ain't looking.
Of course, a visit in Russell when you're on the Bay of Islands is a must.
Ain't looking back. Ain't looking.
booked the mooring beforehand and were assigned a buoy number. We had some problems finding the buoy. Gijs is checking out the buoy numbers in the tender. Russell is New Zealand's first capital and was known during the early years as the hellhole of the Pacific because of its reputation of lawlessness, drunken men and loose women. Today it is a charming laid-back seaside town with lots of nice cafes and restaurants.
Ain't looking bad.
A depression is heading our way. We decided to shelter a couple of days in Opera Marine. It was a bit tricky to maneuver into the berth because of the strong tidal flow under the wharf, but we managed after the third attempt. We were slowly planning to head back to Wangaparoa because some upgrades to our instruments were scheduled by the end of April. We were checking the weather forecast daily for a weather window to sail back. We need at least 2 good days for our return trip. Another cyclone was heading our way in a couple of days, and the prevailing wind was against us for the journey back. We extended our marine berth for the next week, but decided to head off just around the corner in the nearby bay to anchor out for a night before returning to the marine to shelter. At coffee the next day, we saw that the low pressure system was arriving a bit later than expected and quickly lifted anchor and set off to Cape Red to see if the sea conditions were okay for us to sail back to Wangaparoa. We're trying to aim to stop in Wangaruru or Tutukaka.
Today at the helm, we've just rounded Cape Red. You can see in the distance there. We're never really sure what we're going to encounter on the other side. But we came round okay and we put up the sails and now we are doing... How's it going today?
Well,
1 hour before our expected arrival time in Tutukaka, an engine warning light started to burn. It warned us of water detection in the filter. We were getting worried if the engine will continue working to make it to the safety of the harbor. We arrived there after sunset, and the lined up harbor lights guided us safely through the narrow entrance. Luckily the engine continued working, and after dropping anchor, Gijs was working to sort out the engine problem by cleaning the filter. Gijs managed to clean the fuel filter, with the result that the next morning when we woke up, the red warning light had disappeared. We left before sunrise to sail to Wangaparoa. Watching the sunrise was magical.
Marking the gate to the Vapido.
We managed to hoist the sail for short parts of our passage.
How was the trip yesterday?
a little bit more stressful. It was quite dark when we entered Tutukaka, and it's a difficult harbor to enter. You have to line up in 2 lines, so it was tricky.
Engine trouble?
And engine trouble.
Yeah. All good, all came good. Yeah, and so slowly plodding away at 5.2 knots with a almost similar wind speed, not much, but a really efficient sailing angle. This yacht is getting the most out of it. What a beautiful fitting way to end our trip up north to the Bay of Islands. And just slowly cruise. 2 hours left before sunset, and we'll get there nicely on time at this rate. in the beautiful quiet of the peaceful Hawaii Gulf.
After a journey of 70 miles, we arrived safely back in our home base, closing off another sailing adventure in New Zealand.